Our character Daniel woke up and checked how well he had slept before he checked whether he was actually awake yet. 6 hours and 42 minutes. Not great, not terrible. His watch gave him a graph and a score, so before his feet had even touched the floor, the day had already been graded, and this was normal for him. He didn't think of himself as obsessive. Nobody ever does. He thought of himself as disciplined. He had a morning routine, obviously. Water first. No phone for the first 30 minutes unless he was checking his sleep score, which apparently didn't count because that was health data, not scrolling. Then stretching, then journaling, then 10 minutes of meditation, which mostly involved wondering whether he was meditating correctly. Then breakfast, high protein, sensible, slightly boring. By 8:15, he had already done more good habits than most people manage in a week, and yet somehow he felt behind. That was the strange part. His life looked impressive from the outside. He exercised, he read, he planned his week, he tracked his spending. He had goals broken into quarterly targets, monthly milestones, weekly priorities, daily tasks, and at least one spreadsheet that had become self-aware and was probably legally entitled to wages. Everything was organized. Everything had a reason. Everything was becoming better. Except Daniel. Daniel was tired. Not tired in the simple way, where you sleep and feel better. Tired in the deeper way. The kind where resting doesn't feel beneficial because part of him is asking if this is really the best use of his time. He ignores that feeling because ignoring feelings was easy when you have a routine. And Daniel had systems for everything. A system for work, a system for food, a system for exercise, a system for learning, a system for being less stressed, which somehow became one of the most stressful systems of all. At first, none of this looked like a problem. That's what made it dangerous. It started innocently. A few years earlier, Daniel had felt messy, lost, maybe. His days blurred together. He wasted evenings, missed deadlines, ate whatever was easiest, and carried around that low-level guilt that follows you when you know you're capable of more. So he decided to get his life together. And honestly, it worked. For a while, it really worked. He started sleeping better. He got fitter. His work improved. His flat became less of a crime scene. He stopped spending money he couldn't afford. Life got better. So he added more. Because if a little structure helped, surely more structure would help more. That's how the trap works. It doesn't look obviously negative. It arrives looking like progress. One habit becomes 5. 5 habits become a routine. The routine becomes an identity. And eventually, you don't do the habits because they help you live. You do them because you don't know who you are without them. One Friday evening, Daniel got invited to a friend's birthday. Nothing huge, just food, drinks, people sitting around talking nonsense. The kind of night that doesn't sound important until years later, when you realize those were the nights that actually mattered. But Daniel hesitated, because Friday evening was already accounted for. He had planned a workout, meal prep, laundry, and an early night because Saturday was his deep work morning. That phrase alone should have been a cry for help. He went to the birthday anyway, but only physically. Mentally, he was elsewhere. He kept checking the time. He thought about the workout he had skipped, how late it was getting, and whether one drink would ruin his sleep. Daniel wondered about how he should be enjoying himself more, which is one of the fastest ways to enjoy yourself less. His friend laughed at something across the table and everyone joined in. Daniel smiled blankly. Not that he didn't care, but because he wasn't fully there. A part of him was always monitoring or calculating, always asking, is this good for me? And that sounds responsible until you realize how sad it is, because there he was, surrounded by people who cared about him, treating the evening like an interruption, a threat to the plan. He left early. The next morning, he woke up on time. His sleep score was excellent. His routine was intact. His streak was safe, and he felt absolutely nothing. Not proud or refreshed, just empty. This was the first crack, because Daniel had done everything right. He had protected his routine and made sensible choices. But when he looked back at the night before, he didn't remember discipline. He remembered the look on his friend's face when he said he had to go. He wasn't angry, not even surprised. He was used to it. And that was worse, because it meant this wasn't the first time. That morning, Daniel opened his task app and stared at the list. Workout, shopping, clean bathroom, read 20 pages, reply to some work emails, plan the following week. A regular list, but suddenly it looked absurd. Not because any of the tasks were bad, they weren't, but because for the first time, he realized he was not using the list to support his life. He was using the list to avoid it. Stop. Every second you spend treating your life like a project is a second you're losing forever. And the cruel part is that it doesn't feel like losing. It feels like being responsible. It feels like being disciplined. It feels like becoming the person you were supposed to be. But sometimes the person you were supposed to be is just a person who was allowed to enjoy a Friday night without turning it into a moral dilemma. Daniel didn't have a breakdown. This isn't a film. He didn't throw his phone into the sea, delete every app, quit his job, and move to a village to make pottery. He just started noticing things. That was the beginning. He noticed that he couldn't drink coffee without wondering if the timing was optimal. He noticed that walks had become step counts. He noticed that reading had become another box to tick. He noticed that rest made him anxious. He realized that he kept saying, once things calm down, even though things never actually calmed down. And then one evening, after another perfectly productive day, he asked himself a question that made him feel genuinely sick. What am I trying to earn? Because that was the hidden belief underneath all of it. That life was something he had to earn. Rest had to be earned. Joy had to be earned. Peace had to be earned. Even doing nothing had to be justified as recovery, so he could eventually be productive again. That is when self-improvement becomes a prison. Not when you have goals or you work hard, not when you care about your health. It becomes a prison when every part of your life has to prove its usefulness. When nothing is allowed to simply be. When even happiness needs to be justified. So Daniel made one small rule. Before adding a new habit, routine, goal, or system, he had to ask, will this make my life bigger or smaller? That was it. Not, is this impressive? Not, will this make me more productive? Just, will this make my life bigger or smaller? Exercise because it gave him energy? Bigger. Exercise because he hated himself if he missed a day? Smaller. Planning his week so he felt calmer? Bigger. Planning every hour because unstructured time terrified him? Smaller. Reading because he was curious? Bigger. Reading because he wanted to become the sort of person who reads books. Smaller, also unbearable at dinner parties. Seeing friends even if it disrupted the routine. Bigger. Leaving early every time to protect the perfect version of tomorrow. Smaller. That question changed more than he expected. Not instantly or magically, but slowly. He kept the habits that helped him feel more alive. He let go of the ones that only made him feel more controlled. He still worked hard and he had goals and planned things, but he stopped treating every ordinary moment like raw material for self-improvement. Some walks became just walks. Some meals became just meals. Some evenings became beautifully, gloriously inefficient, and nothing collapsed. That was the shocking part. The world did not end because he missed a workout. His life did not fall apart because he slept in. His personality did not disintegrate because he watched a stupid film and enjoyed it without learning a single lesson. In fact, he started to feel more like a person again. Not less ambitious or lost, just present. And maybe that is the part we get wrong. We think the opposite of obsession is giving up. It isn't. The opposite of obsession is freedom. Freedom to care without worshipping. Freedom to improve without disappearing. Freedom to build a better life without treating the current one like an embarrassing first draft. Because the countdown is real. Not in the nihilistic sense. Not in the panic immediately and change everything by Monday sense. But in the quiet, ordinary, brutal sense. Your life is made of days you do not get back. Mornings, walks, conversations, meals, random jokes, lazy evenings, small moments that will never look important on a spreadsheet, but somehow end up being the things you miss. A finished to-do list is not the same thing as a meaningful day. And that doesn't mean the list is useless. It means the list is not the point. Your life is not a project. It is not a streak. It is not a graph. It is not a personal brand. It is not something you finally get to enjoy after you have fixed every flaw, solved every insecurity, and become some imaginary perfect version of yourself. It is happening now while you are tired, while you are unfinished, while you are still figuring things out. So yes, improve your life, get healthier, get stronger, learn things, build things, take yourself seriously, but do not become so obsessed with creating the perfect life that you miss the actual one, because the countdown does not pause while you optimize. And one day, the thing you will want back most will not be the perfectly managed routine. It will be the ordinary moment you were too busy measuring to live.